Hi everyone. I wanted to show you a couple PDFs and explain to you how these students had built these excellent examples with the hopes that it would inspire you to achieve as much detail as possible this week for assignment 7. In this particular example, you can see the steps that this student has used to create these different shadows. I want to talk about this foreground sneaker to begin with. When you look underneath the arch of the sneaker, see how this piece is dark to light? And look how the shadow bends over the boot. And see how she's used transparencies. She drew the pattern of the boot first. This is with a series of grouped shapes, compounded paths, and the warp tool. This is much more advanced than I want to get into with you right now, but this student had some advanced training ahead of the class, so she had chose this pattern. And I wanted to point out that the transparencies you see for the shadows and how they bend. Also, the highlight of the boot, these are those vinyl shiny rain boots. She had used the Gaussian blur, so she put opaque white, a white shape, on top of the houndstooth pattern she had built. Okay? And here in the sneaker, you have good contrast from the shoelaces to the darker grays. And over here, although these are all closely related in value, you have enough contrast to see the individual parts of the shoe. Then this other student example I wanted to show you. Again, look here at how there's a series of different values, how each shape bends with how the lace bends, and how this shadow that's cast from the lace onto the side of the shoe has subtlety. In the floor, you have two different shades of gray to show the core of the shadow closer to the shoe, and then how the shadow would fade away. He did not use a Gaussian blur here, and it's still very effective. So you don't necessarily have to soften the edges. If you do that too much, it could look a little fake. And in this shoelace, this little piece of black on the edge casts the darker shadow to the floor that lets this shoelace look like it's sitting above the floor a little bit there. And then this is a darker shadow for the Converse. And then you can see the subtle values used to show a dark part of the shadow and a light part of the shadow as it hits the wall. And see how the shadow is slightly curved as it goes around the shoe, hits the floorboard, and then is cast onto the wall. So it's not so much using a gradient or even using a transparency tool as much as it is thinking of the character of the shape and overlapping the shapes needed. And the last student example I wanted to show you. In this particular example, she had drawn all the individual circles on top of a darker gray background. The circles farther from her eye in this area are a bit smaller and slightly elliptical compared to the circles that are bigger, and the elliptical angle is a little more dramatic. But see how the shadow arcs around the boot. And look at how this shadow changed direction when it hit this boot. And these shadows are created by using the transparency tool. And this shadow here was a shape that's drawn on top of everything, but then it's the transparency of it, and as it hits here on the high key, the lighter value shoe, you can see that it's a shadow from the bottom of the boot here. So I wanted to show you these student examples and how they're thinking very logically and observing very carefully how light hits the shoes and changes direction and moves. Like in the heel of the shoe, this darker shape compared to the shadow here. I can clearly see the darkness and the side edge, the inside edge of that heel. And remember, we see values in terms of relationships. So what other values are around a given color. If I take a very dark gray color and surround it by light gray colors, it will look even darker because of what it's around. So when you start to build a shoe, think about what key. Is it a high key, all light grays? Is it a middle key, all middle grays? Or are they dark colors? And like this particular shoe here, he had chosen all these dark colors to show, or I could say dark values, to show this particular sneaker. Even the shoelaces are slightly grayed, and then it's a little lighter as it moves away from your eye. So I hope this explanation in analyzing and looking at these students' drawings helps you make decisions about how to layer your values, group them together so that you have contrast. So within an individual shoe, it has a sense of unity because of the tonal range. And then one shoe, because of its relationships, will stand against another shoe that's behind it. So it's not necessarily accurately recording the true value of the shoes as you see them. It's making logical decisions how to create layers of space and unity within one kind of shoe to separate it from the distinction of the shoe behind it. So these are all middle key values. These are a little bit darker. And this area here is a little bit of a high key value. So I hope this helps you make decisions to achieve a strong outcome. And again, please email me with any questions.